Okay, so today we are doing another Dear Authors. This time we're talking about writing emotions effectively. So if you're new to this channel, to this series, this is a series where readers chat with readers about what works and doesn't work for us in books. I posted a community tab asking what works for conveying emotions effectively and what makes these things kind of fall flat. So normally I try to keep my critique work out of it. I try to keep this all about readers discussing, and I am just kind of the facilitator of it. But there was a lot of technical advice given in this one. There were a lot of technical things discussed. So I'm going to bring some critique work stuff into it. I won't let it dominate the video, but it is going to be in the very first thing that we discuss. Because the most upvoted comment was refrain from stating the obvious. She cried. He was depressed. They were happy and hearty. Let your writing do the talking and let the readers feel emotions as they go ahead. So writing emotions, conveying emotions appropriately is one of the most common things that I spend a lot of time working with authors on when I'm critiquing manuscripts. So this is something that comes up a lot. This is obviously telling versus showing when you state the emotion as opposed to writing the emotion out. But show don't tell is much easier said than done, and also it doesn't really fully convey what's going on. So things that come up a lot. He said angrily, she said grumpily. These are examples of stating emotion instead of drawing out emotion. You want to paint a picture that the reader can step into rather than just stating fact and moving on. So how do you do that? Instead of saying he said it angrily, he shouted. He slammed his fist on the table. He snapped. Instead of she said grumpily, she crossed her arms. Something that also comes up a lot as far as dialogue tags go, which is what we're talking about right now, is showing, and then telling. This is also something that I'm constantly working with authors on. A lot of times they may say, she sighed with frustration. He yelled in anger. This is what we call hand-holding, and readers hate this too. Good job, you're halfway there. The author showed us the sigh, but then they overstated it by telling us because they don't trust the reader. We can see the sigh and we can understand that you're exasperated, that you're tired, that you're frustrated, that you're angry. We can see that you're shouting and we can assess that you are not happy. Showing followed by telling feels to the reader like the author doesn't trust us, thinks we're stupid, is talking down to us, and doesn't trust us to see emotions and understand what those emotions are. Readers are smart. Trust your readers to see what you're writing, read a scene, and understand it. Why does this matter? Why can't you just state the emotion? Why do you need to do it this other way? The honest answer is because if an author wants readers to actually feel emotions, we need to feel like we're there. And when everything is filtered through either the character's senses or okay, I'm walking a tight line here. I'm not trying to go into intense writing advice. When things are simply stated and then we move on, which I'm going to touch more on this in a bit, it creates a barrier between the reader and the scene. What the best thing for the readers is if we're drawn into the scene, and the best way to do that is to make everything experiential, right? So we want to see the emotions on page. If we can see a character expressing anger, obviously we can understand that emotion is anger. We've experienced anger, we've seen it, we know what it looks like. Someone slamming their fist on the table, we will not interpret that as happy. We're not going to do it. But what we will do is we will immediately be drawn more into the scene because we've now watched something happen that brings us closer and gets us more involved, as opposed to just being told something is happening and we're still keeping our distance. Bringing us closer to real emotion that we can see makes us more invested in the story and makes us feel closer to what's happening. So this one is more of a character thing than an emotion thing, but the two tie close enough together that I wanted to show this one as well. If your character is strong, let them break. If your character is selfless, let them get mad. If your character is mean, give them a moment of kindness. If your character is a heartbroken victim, let them smile. If your character has lost everything, let them find something. And it goes on. The point here is that characters can easily be one-dimensional if the author wants them to be something, and so they write them as that thing. But in order for the character to be more of a human and someone that we can care about, whether we care about them in like we hate them or we relate to them or we don't want to be anything like them, but we're really interested in following them, in order to have that kind of connection between character and reader, having them have complex emotion and more than just one note of a personality is very important. And it's important for characters and readers to connect, because we're not going to care about a character's emotions if we don't care about the character. This is a big one. Emotions can't be rushed. If something tragic happens, let the character grieve. It's not realistic that the character would be fine the next chapter, but at the same time, lingering too long can be emotionally exhausting for the reader and can turn them off as well. So this book, Shadow of What Was Lost, is a popular fantasy series. It's one of my brother's favorite series, and we have very similar reading taste. I really liked it, but one thing that I got really hung up on was the characters' emotions never felt authentic to me in that first book. The characters would go through something super traumatic and they would process that emotion a little bit, and then they just go along on their journey and not think about it, and it was as if they had forgotten about it. It was as if they just shook it off and kept going and kept going and kept going until plot dictated that they needed to bring it up again, and then all of a sudden they'd feel emotions again so that they could bring it up so that the plot could move forward, and then they'd drop those emotions and they keep going and moving on, and nothing ever seemed to stick to them. And that was really difficult for me as a very character-focused reader. A lot of stuff happened with these characters and nothing seemed to move forward with them emotionally. And that made me not continue on with the series, even though I really enjoyed the plot and the magic, and there were so many things going on that were great about it. I was going to move on with the series, but I forgot about it because I wasn't attached to the characters, because the emotions weren't attached to the characters. They fell right off. Characters can't just shake something off, and characters aren't going to just forget about something big. And we're not just talking about deaths here. We're talking about anything that can happen. Maybe a broken relationship, maybe a betrayal, maybe, I don't know, it could be even small things. And it doesn't have to be something that the character can't get over and constantly thinks about and brings up around every corner. You know, there's a balance, but it's something that has to stick with them in order for it to actually have any emotional significance. Otherwise, readers are just like, why did we even do this? So this is a really good one as we're talking about showing versus telling. Here's the other side of that. As an actor and as well as a writer, it has to come from a place of honesty. Physical sensations and emotions can get too flowery too quick. You don't need to write, "She boiled over with anger like 1,000 erupting volcanoes" every time a character gets upset. And not every confession of love needs to result in sex. Extremes can harm your writing more than help it. So finding places where you can restrain your character's emotions as well as allow them to process can be useful. So I recently interviewed Joe Abercrombie talking about prose, as well as we talked about characters, writing great characters as well. I'll link the video. One thing that he mentioned is that when he first started writing, he would say something really elaborate when describing this guy. I don't remember the example he gave. And he had his mom read his book, and his mom said, "But is it though? I mean, is that honest? Is that really what this guy looks like?" And Joe said, "Well, no, not really." And his conclusion to that, his point to that, was to write things honestly. Is it honest? Take a step back from how you've written something, and is it honest? And the example just given, their emotions bubbled over like a boiling volcano of, I don't remember, but is that honest? Is that an honest description of what's happening? Really getting inside your body and thinking, what does an anxiety attack feel like? What does it feel like to be truly disturbed? What's it like to have so much grief that it feels like you're drowning? I kind of just described what it feels like. It feels like drowning. But the point is, what the emotions that you're trying to describe, what does it feel like? Does it feel like in a volcano erupting 1,000 times over again? Or does it feel like something a little bit more honest? Getting inside of your body, getting inside of your skin, and writing from within is almost always going to be more effective. But then also, this is something that comes up a lot with critiques. So I'm going to hop over to the critiquing side of things again. You would be surprised how often it comes up where a character will respond to extreme frustration or grief by jumping up and down and shouting to the heavens. That comes up a lot in manuscripts, and I always try to help the author find a better way. These over-the-top extreme reactions don't translate well to paper. Maybe somebody out there in the world does jump up and down when they're super angry and ball their fists up and shout at the sky. You might be that person. Live your life. That does not translate well to paper. To paper, that looks like a 3-year-old throwing a tantrum. It ages the character down and it ends up looking really melodramatic, which totally pulls the reader out of the scene and makes us roll our eyes. There is a balance, and admittedly, it's not always easy to find for not going over the top where your adult character now looks like a toddler throwing a tantrum, doesn't look melodramatic, doesn't look ridiculous and silly, but looks honest. Again, it's all about getting inside your own skin, getting inside your own body, and writing from what something actually feels like instead of trying to be flowery and over the top and trying to describe it uniquely this time. Writing honestly is almost always better. This is great variation. I've always had this problem in many pieces of media where all characters have the same reaction to everything. For example, if someone were murdered, everyone will be written off together as sad. This needs to be elaborated on. While one character may be feeling terrible and angry after his best friend's death, another might be extremely annoyed that their source of information was extinguished. Characters can feel the same things in many different ways. Only writing down the reasons when convenient is honestly quite lazy. An emotion can still be natural without being the same as the main characters. Again, I'm going to recommend that video, that interview I did with Joe Abercrombie, because, gosh, it was so great for writing characters. I really admire Joe's prose, and I love that he can take, which he writes the First Law trilogy, and he writes a bunch of standalones. He has other series. He has a lot of books. He could take characters with different accents from different countries, from different cultures, with different backgrounds, with different moral codes, and he can make every single one of their individual voices feel completely unique. When we change perspective from character to character, you know whose character's head you're in. Even if you miss their name, you know where you are, because every character has a distinct voice in the way he writes them, in the way they think, in the way they perceive the world, and in the emotions they display, the way they emotionally react to their environments around them. Some of them will be hardened. Some of them will be melodramatic on purpose and not in a cheesy way. Some of them will be very, very emotional or very, very closed off. He has completely different emotions, completely different personalities, completely different ways of viewing the world in each character's head that he's in. I really, really love the way he did this in Best Served Cold. I highly recommend Best Served Cold. It's a standalone, and you can start there, even though all the Joe Abercrombie fans are screaming at me right now. You can do it. Anyway, the way he described that is the way to accomplish that, to not just copy and paste the same emotions on every single character, is to really get to know your characters, get inside their heads, find out what makes each of them tick, what's individual about them, what their beliefs and moral codes and the way they see the world is, and then write from that character's point of view, right from what you know about that character. The way they express themselves is going to look different for each character if you truly know that character well. Again, go watch that interview. He was so good, so helpful. But this is a really good point and something that I definitely want to make sure is pointed out, because it's too easy to copy and paste characters so that they all feel the same. And if you have a multiple POV book, oh my goodness, is it such a sin to make every POV feel exactly the same. Make sure they experience emotions differently, and if there's some big catastrophic thing or emotional thing or big thing that happens in the story, different characters experiencing their grieving or their frustration or whatever they're feeling in individual ways is so satisfying to read. I think books, more than any other medium of entertainment, allow the consumer to really get inside a character's mind. I feel like a lot of authors don't utilize this, especially when there is so much potential for the readers to connect with the character on a deep level. So I'm going to give another example for critiques. This is something that comes up often. A lot of times authors will state actions and forget to bring in emotions. And when we're in a very heavy moment that is terrible for the reading experience. Let's say a character is in captivity and just got a hold of a phone. They're trying to quickly make a call before the guards come back. They call their friend and their friend doesn't answer. Or their friend answers and doesn't recognize the call and tells them to leave them alone and they hang up. This would be a bummer for your character. If the author writes this scene as they picked up the phone, they made the call, oh no, they didn't answer. They left a voicemail. They made another call. What a relief to hear that person's voice. They hung up on them. Oh no. They move on to the next thing, trying to find their way out of this prison cell. I don't care about anything that just happened. In fact, I will probably forget about that moment because nothing impactful happened in what should be kind of an important scene, at least emotionally. Taking the time to write out the emotions of a scene can make that scene so much more impactful. If the character is listening to the ringing, waiting with bated breath, listening around them for footsteps or for someone that's coming back while they're waiting for someone to pick up and for the ringing to stop, and then it goes to voicemail and their heart drops. They leave a rushed voicemail and then they call the next number. They wait for the ringing again. They're listening to the footsteps around them. Someone picks up. A wash of relief comes over them. Their voice actually chokes up when they say hello, distorting their voice, making the person on the other end not trust them and hang up. They sink to the ground and the tears fall. Their head falls into their hands. They can't believe they missed the opportunity. The scene can pass by completely unmemorably if it's just description, 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 description. But when the time is taken to write in the emotions of the scene, as a reader, we're suddenly on the edge of our seat. We suddenly care about this phone call. We care about this character that's life is on the line, that this is their one opportunity to get out of this terrible situation. And when the character drops the phone on the ground and breaks down crying, we care. We feel the phone drop. We sink down with them. We are devastated too. Writing the emotion into the scene rather than just writing descriptions of what's happening makes a world of difference. This is more of an opinion and less of technical advice, but I really like it, so I'm gonna say it. This might just be me, but if your character is in a hard situation, aka most stories, and doesn't break at some point, it doesn't feel right to me. Maybe a tough character finally lets themselves cry, or someone has a meltdown, or gets really angry and screams and shouts, but at the breaking point of the story. I really do want the character to break in some way. So it can look different for every character, and every character's breaking point is going to be on a different scale from the next. A breaking point may just be silent tears. It may be this big emotional thing. It may be shutting down completely. But it's true, I do agree if a book is really going to have some major impact on me, if a character is in a tough situation, hitting that breaking point, it usually is the moment where I'm like, this might be a new favorite book. Because that's such a big part of readers getting fully melding with the character and being there with them. It's good stuff. Okay, I'm almost done. I'm gonna do a quick one that got a lot of upvotes. That's basically a list of just solid advice, good things to keep in mind, and then we're gonna end on a C.S. Lewis quote. Men cry and women can hold in their emotions, and vice versa. It's not called reversing roles, it's called life. Just a note, I agree. I know it's stereotypical that the man is a strong guy who holds back his emotions and can't talk through things, and the woman is the one that cries over the drop of the hat. As someone who is in a marriage where the woman holds back emotions and the man cries at the drop of a hat or just feels all of his emotions, yeah, it's not called role reversal, it's called life. Humans are complex. Having a character feel like their feelings are invalid because other people didn't react the same way in the same situation. React to the same situation in the same way. Characters feeling guilty talking about their emotion when others around them are going through worse. Not everyone knows how they feel. Let us feel your character's confusion. Let them make decisions that they question later because of their feelings. Characters aren't black or white, they're more like gray. A kind person will make selfish mistakes, and a selfish person will have moments of kindness. Again, this is kind of just a list of general great things to keep in mind, and it all boils down to characters are complex and not simplistic. So write them that way, the best you can. Okay, I'm gonna end on a C.S. Lewis quote, but I want to point out one other book because I haven't given a lot of examples of books that write emotions really well. One book that has been fantastic for me for experiencing emotions. Well, I mean, Frederick Bachman is really good at this, so check out some Bachman. But Pet Sematary by Stephen King, the whole book is an exploration of grief. It starts out with a small, comparatively, bit of grief, a small tragedy that happens, and then it levels up and levels up and levels up and levels up, and it experiences different levels of grief and desperation as it goes. And I think King did such a fantastic job at exploring that grief and at having these complex discussions and really showing us the different levels and the different ways of processing it and experiencing it and having really difficult discussions within the book. I've said this before on my channel, but in case you didn't hear it yet, I first read this book shortly after I had experienced a very personal and painful loss. And in that time, I had read several nonfiction books trying to process my grief, and they were great, and I appreciated them, and I learned a lot. But it wasn't until I picked up Pet Sematary that I felt like I was really processing it. Like, Pet Sematary was the best processing of grief I have experienced through a book. And I know King worked really closely with therapists and psychiatrists, I don't remember. He worked really closely with professionals to help him understand this better so that he could do it justice. And oh my goodness, did he do it justice. So this would also be a really good resource for helping to process emotions, helping to be able to see it done well. C.S. Lewis. In writing, don't use adjectives which merely tell us how you want us to feel about the things you are describing. I mean, instead of telling us the thing is terrible, describe it so that we'll be terrified. Don't say it was delightful. Make us say delightful when we've read the description. You see, all these words, horrifying, wonderful, hideous, exquisite, are only like saying to your readers, please, will you do my job for me? I love this quote, and I think it sums up this video very, very well. So I hope you enjoyed this version of Dear Authors, hope you gained something, hope you enjoyed the discussion. If you participated, be sure to continue chatting about it in the comments, and check out my Patreon if you want to buddy read some great books with me or read some of my own writing. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.